I think we can get started now. Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks again for joining us today for another discussion on community forestry. Just a few housekeeping rules. We have automatically muted everyone, but feel free to send messages in the chat box, introduce yourselves, and don't forget to select all attendees and panelists so that everyone can read your messages. You can also customize your view so that you focus on either the presentation or the presenter. And remember, you can send your questions to the panelists, address the question to the panelists that you'd like to address that question, and send that to the Q&A box. So you're welcome, and we look forward to a very engaging discussion. So I will hand you over to our facilitator for today, Royd. Hi, Royd.
Hi. Hi, Chirombo. Thanks a lot. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to our CFM webinar series. So today, this is our third webinar, and today's discussion, we are looking at the law enforcement and the benefit sharing under CFMG. So the two presentations basically reinforce each other. Where there is no law enforcement, then benefits will not flow to the communities. There will be a lot of illegal activities going on. So each of the presentations, again, is 35 minutes. And then we have 15 minutes to get the views from the ground, which is the DFO perspective. And the way we are going to proceed today is we'll depart a little bit from what we've done before. So for Alistair's presentation, which is forest control and law enforcement in community forest management, we shall immediately after the presentation get into question and answer session for 10 minutes. Then we will come back to our standard way of doing things. Okay, so again, welcome back to this. So we have two presentations. One is looking at forest control and law enforcement in the community forest management area. And this will be presented by Alistair Anton. Then the second one will be looking at benefit sharing. So the bigger question we are looking at, does a good benefit sharing mechanism lead to positive outcomes in community forestry management? And this will be presented by Mr. Maxwell Piri, who is the PFO for Northwestern Province. So between the two of them, collectively, Alistair and Maxwell, we have close to 60 years of forest practice, and I'm positive that this will be a very captivating presentation. So again, just to introduce the first speaker, Alistair is currently with ZIFU in Eastern Province. He has the wealth of experience in terms of forest management, which spans across much of Southern Africa, Botswana, Malawi, and now Zambia. He was again instrumental in when we are coming up with models of community forestry management. He was the chief technical advisor for the decentralized forest and other natural resources forests. So, Alistair, I hand over to you. Please feed us with good information on forest control and law enforcement in CFM. Thank
you. Great, Royd. Thank you very much. I'm glad my video is off. For that 30-year of experience, you don't see my gray hair. Yeah, so hello to everyone who's listening in. So I'm going to cover, from my perspective, one of the most important topics in community forestry. That is, I'm going to cover controlling access and use, communities setting local resource rules and penalties. I'm going to talk about the basis for local level forest law enforcement and some of the issues over the limits of authority and jurisdictions to communities. And I'm speaking from Patauki. We are in the middle of conducting training in this topic with community groups and forestry staff. I'm just trying to get my present. There we go. So the basis of community forestry is about the transfer of legal rights, control over forest areas, but it also balance with responsibilities to maintain and protect those areas. And if we have the right balance between responsibilities and rights, then we expect that there will be sustainable benefits into the future. And this is really what is expected from the National Forestry Policy of 2014, which brings communities and traditional leaders closer into decision-making over forest resources, but also benefit sharing, which will be also covered in this session this afternoon. And it's also reflected in the national strategy for reducing emissions from forest degradation and deforestation. So basically, what does this give communities? It's the rights to control access, use and management of a designated area of forest. And this can be for both subsistence use, local commercial use, but also wider economic use, trading with outsiders. And they're able to issue permits. And quite uniquely for some community forestry in the world, they're also able to collect and retain that revenue. But with these rights, however, there are obligations to protect and manage this area and be accountable to their wider community. Now, this process has been set out in the guidelines for community forestry, and I covered this last week, and there's a set of national guidelines that were developed back in 2018, and also share again the web address for those guidelines currently on the project website. What I'm going to focus on this afternoon, though, is step 6, which is the implementation of the management plan, and this is the tool for control, but it also depends on the steps that were done, how thoroughly and well steps 4 of management planning and developing rules, and also understanding the legal agreement, and I'll go into that in a bit more detail. So step 6 in the process, implementing the management plan, I'm going to focus on the aspect of controlling access and forest product regulation. And that's basically deciding what products can be harvested, who can harvest them, how much can they extract, and if there's any payment involved. Just to remind that the basis for this legal transfer of rights is the Community Forest Management Regulations of 2018. And the rights are transferred through the Community Forest Management Agreement, and that's Form 4 from the regulation. And this is the legal document where the Director of Forestry agrees to transfer management authority of these resources for the purpose of communal control, use and management of the forest. And also it's where the Community Forest Management Group agreed to take responsibility for the control and management of this area. And it's a document that is entered into between government and the community, but also importantly, it's consented to and witnessed by the traditional leaders, by the chief of the area. And this is very important, and you'll see that as I go through my presentation. The other key aspect of this legal document, Form 4, is the map that is attached to it, because that basically sets the area of responsibility. And in terms of law enforcement, it sets the area of jurisdiction, the area that the powers that are given to the communities apply to. And also annexed to the agreement is the Forest Management Plan. And in that plan sets out the agreed set of rules and measures that support the proper management of the community forest. And that's really the basis of the law enforcement. So given the importance of these, the document and the agreements and the rights and also obligations contained within, it's hugely important that this is not just understood by those who signed and the executive of the Community Forest Management Group, but also the community members, both women and men, that they understand the rights that they receive, but also the obligations that they are accepting to comply. And also that the traditional leaders understand as well. And the photograph on the bottom left is in Kasempa, Senior Chief Kasempa. And before he signed the agreement for the community forest management groups, he called the chairpersons in to make sure that they fully understood what they were getting into, and what were the benefits, but what were the obligations. So that is really fundamental to this process. And then also that it's a partnership with the forestry department. And the bottom right there is one of the provincial forestry officers, Mr. Nonde, handing over the agreement to the community members. So to make this all work, it means that both the CFMG, the community members, the traditional leadership, and the forestry are fully aware and understand the rights and obligations. I'm going to just quickly look at a bit more detail at this agreement, because it's the fundamental document for community forestry in Zambia. And basically, it provides the rights for communities to issue permits, to control access, but also issue permits and collect revenue for products that are provided for in the agreement. And as I said, that is very enabling. Another enabling part of the agreement is that they're also able to issue fines for the rules that they have set in their management plan, but also retain those fines as well. So again, that is very very empowering. What is very important also, that this is for everyone. It's not just for a small group. So that's why I've said it's critical that there's full understanding of who has the rights to the area, and therefore rights to resources. And in the statutory instrument, the Community Forest Management regulations, in section 6, it states that under the group applying for recognition, and therefore applying for the rights, that they require prior consultation with the local users and other right holders of the proposed forest area, so that everyone is fully informed and aware and involved. And this, in a way, is in red speak, is the FPIC, the free prior informed consent. So the guidelines and regulations in Zambia do require this as well. So what does this actually imply? Who has access and who has rights to collect forest resources? And it must be made clear at all stages that it is for the community, both women, both men, those who are collecting for their own use, and even those who are collecting for commercial use. And therefore, we need to understand the importance and use and availability of forest resources. And in step 2, when we're looking at the forest area, identifying the forest area, and in step 4, where we're looking at the management of the resources, it's very important to understand what is there, how it is used, the importance, the availability of resources to all members of the community, such that they can prepare a good product-based management plan, that they can develop resource use rules to reconcile demand with supply, and therefore to determine ways to increase the productivity and therefore the value of the forest to the community. And this provides the basis of the management plan, the product-based management plan that we are using to develop with the communities. And from this product-based management plan, they can develop now their rules and penalties. And the aim of this is so that they protect, conserve, and improve the productivity, and therefore increase the value of the forest to the communities. So I'll just very briefly look at that, because it's very important for, I think, for developing rules and therefore the law enforcement. This is the matrix, the template that we're using. So we take one product in turn, and we look at what are the species, what is the demand, the importance to the community, the demand for that product from the forest area, what is the supply of that product, are there any problems or issues relating to the supply of that product, like a reconciliation of demand with supply. We ask them to look at what are some strategies that they can use to increase the productivity of these resources, and then any rules that might be developed that relate to that product. It might be that the product availability is limited due to fires, so bringing in rules about fire. It might be rules about product harvesting, such as chikanda, that people are not digging up everything and taking away everything, so that there's something there for next year. So this is the basis of the Community Forest Management Plan and the template that we're using. And from this, we then develop a simple licensing plan so that we can see what are the products availability, who can collect, how much can be collected, and this is used as the basis for determining what permissions, what permits can be used, to whom, for what, how much is developed based on the availability and the issues affecting the supply of a particular resource. So supply is looked at in order to determine what is available and what can therefore be sustainably harvested over time. And it's also important to then to discuss with the communities how much can be harvested, what is sustainable, what does the sustainable forest management mean in their situation, and whether their resources, are they few or the many, are they abundant or are they scarce, and how can they be replaced, so that all these issues are considered when they look at controlling access and use of their forest. It's important then to also look at what are the conditions relating to harvesting and use of the forest, and whether they should bring in any restrictions or conditions to that use, such as methods of cutting to encourage coppicing of species, or the chikanda example I gave already. So to see how this relates to all the products available in their forest, and if there should be any issues of restrictions or conditions to the harvest to ensure the sustainability of those products to the community. And also, when considering looking at access and use, it always comes back to again, who are the rights holders to this area of forest? Because these are the people that have been collecting and harvesting these products for free over time. And now bringing in control measures is quite a fundamental issue, so that there has to be understanding by all community members. There needs to, for this to work, there needs to be consensus. And so therefore, this is why it's very, very important that the early steps of step one of sensitization, of identifying the areas, in step two of forming the groups, making the management plans, that all the forest users, the rights holders of the forest, are involved in the management of this forest areas. We've also been discussing with the community groups about determining how much to charge and what's the basis of charging, and that we know that setting fees, one aspect of setting a fee can be influencing behavior over what is and how much is cut. But it's also important to consider the vulnerable groups in the community and their ability to pay, and also the value of the product. Is it a low value product that is traded locally, or a higher value product that is traded wider? So that how much to charge is very important, as much as the willingness to pay and the level of interest to pay. Because as I said, people have been used to harvesting for free from the area, and now control measures are being brought in. So it's very important that the CFMG also consider and communicate what this money will be used for, what the revenue that they collect. Maybe it is for community assets such as boreholes, or there's going to be a bridge that's going to be built to improve access to the community, or the children accessing schools, or construction of school blocks, or constructions of clinics. So having some idea of revenue that is collected from the forest area, how it will be used, so again, brings in the willingness to pay. But the other question is, will be the impact on sales? How much you charge can actually distort markets, and perhaps maybe that some products will become too costly that no one is willing to buy. Another aspect that we raise with the community groups to consider in terms of control is to communicate what are they going to do with the money, what is the cost of management, how much are they going to reinvest back into protection of the resource, such that the resources that they require and request become more abundant, and there the forest becomes more valuable. We're also training the communities now how to issue permits, how to collect revenue, and how to account for that revenue and report back to the communities. Now, how does this relate to law enforcement in terms of now dealing with contravention of these local rules that they've developed based on their management plan? Both local level law enforcement within the forest and what is going on around the forest. And we go back to the Forest Management Agreement because, again, that is the basis of the powers and the authority that they have. And I'll just flick through a couple of key paragraphs of that legal agreement, Form 4, that's in the statutory instrument. They're asked to assist the director with enforcing the Forestry Act, a legal activity. They're asked to mark out and maintain the boundaries of the forest, because that's very important, because that's basically the area of their jurisdiction. They're also asked to protect the forest from damaging activities, fires, pests, theft, poaching, vandalism, and other forms of hazard. But they're not alone. They're being asked to work with the traditional leaders, and again, that's why the chief is a signatory to the agreement, so that they are supported in their endeavours to protect and control their designated area of forest. And they're also being asked to be aware of, respect, and where possible, use the customary laws and existing regulations within their community areas. So they're asked to work with the chiefs and traditional leaders, and they're also asked to use the traditional leadership where there's any resource use conflicts, because when you bring in new controls, laws, or asking people to pay, for sure there is going to be conflicts that will arise. Now, who's involved in law enforcement of these rules? And as I said, they're not alone. There are the traditional structures. There are also the local authorities. There's also the district authorities. But what does this mean now? Because each of these institutions has their own values and their own rules. We're asking the CFMGs to develop community forestry rules. There's already customary laws and rules in place. Councils also have bylaws that might impact on their control of the products that they're licensing from their forest area. The Forestry Department has the Forest Act, and if it's within the GMA, there's also the Wildlife Act. So these, in effect, are different jurisdictions that have to be considered when it comes to local level law enforcement. So what does that look like? So as we say that they're under the Community Forest Management Agreement, under the regulations, the SI, the majority of their powers are really just confined to the community forest management area. That's the area that they've been given responsibility for, that they control access to and license and control illegal activities in. As I say, they operate within a chiefdom area with the customary laws. If they're in a GMA, there is also the Wildlife Act, if there's poaching. If there's product licensing, the council might have bylaws as well. And of course, there is the Forestry Act for contravention of statutory laws. So all these things need to be taken into account when communities are doing their local level law enforcement. So what is important out of this is that they understand what offence has been committed, firstly, where has the offence taken place, then need to consider which rule or law applies, and therefore which authority deals with the offender. So we can see that it's not a simple process, and there are multiple things to consider when they're conducting their law enforcement activities. Now, one of the things that we did put into the regulations, because they're being asked to help the director with enforcing the provisions of the Forestry Act in relation to illegal harvesting of forest produce. So in the statutory instrument, they've been asked to nominate individual members of the communities to be put forward as honorary forest officers in accordance with the Forestry Act. So why did we do that? We did that so that the community forest management groups can also be involved in controlling illegal activities that are going on around their forest areas, around within their communities and in adjacent areas. So this gives them additional powers, but powers that are under statutory powers of law enforcement in the local area. Now, these powers are given in terms of the Forest Act. I think it's Section 5 of the Forest Act, where honorary forest officers are appointed by the Minister of Lands and Natural Resources. And these are published in the Government Gazette. And we're very fortunate that this year was the first, in February, was the first notification of, I think, over 300 honorary forest officers in the country. But I do note that there's a limitation of the powers of these appointed honorary forest officers now for only 3 years. So we need to be aware that the clock is already ticking on these officers. Other thing to note from the gazettement notice that while they can exercise the powers, it's limited now to the district in which they are appointed. The other thing to be aware of, that it's a voluntary appointment, and it's at the convenience of their own time in coordination with the district forest officer. But luckily, that within the forest management agreement, because the community forest management groups are able to retain revenues and fines from within their community forest areas, the hope is that if they have this interest in law enforcement around their forest area, that the revenues they can collect can support that as well. So in our training, it's we want to look at the practicalities and the realities of law enforcement. So dealing with forestry offences. So what do they actually do? It's very easy to see rules and laws are written down, but in reality, how do they react when they find different activities taking place within their community forest area? If they find a kiln, if they find someone harvesting, someone taking a headload, what do they do in these circumstances? Are these permitted or are they not permitted? So whoever is asked to go out and do the patrols, they need to know what's the limit of their powers and what do they do if they see this sort of scale of clearance. How severe is the offence that's taking place? Is it just in their area, or is it contravention of national laws? When they're out on patrol, how much power do they have? What can they do when they encounter different things? What is the level of force that they can use? What is the level of restraint they can use? And what are the limit of their powers? So we use these sort of images to raise questions so that they consider some of the issues that they might face when they're actually out on the ground, protecting their forest and protecting the forest resources in the surrounding area. So just in summary, in some of the issues, just to highlight some key points that we were raising in the training. So the importance that they understand the offence, the nature of the offence. Where did the offence take place? Which rule or law applies to that offence? Who is the competent authority to deal with the offender? Then importantly, is there an admission of guilt? Is there an agreement to pay for the penalty? Because if it's within their community forest area, the person agrees, then that's fine. But if they don't agree and they don't respect the authority of the community forest management group, then they have to take it to the next level of jurisdiction, which is then the customary law and to the palace. And if that's not respected, then again up the level to statutory law. So it's important that they understand these layers. So I'd just like to finish off with just reflecting again on the importance of the step of developing the management plans, because the management plans are key to the management of the forest, and looking at how products are whether they're abundant or scarce, how they should be managed, and therefore how the harvesting should be controlled. and therefore the rules and penalties, are they, do the rule, does it equate to the management of the resource? And therefore, do the communities understand the reason for having a rule and the reason for having the penalty? And I'd just like to finish up with, this was just from yesterday's reflection on the process of control, and particularly on law enforcement. And as you can see, the importance of the rule, the key thing is the understanding, the reason for the rule. Communication in community forestry is paramount. If people understand a rule, the reason for the rule, then they're more likely to be compliant and follow the rule. And if they understand that this is for their benefit, to increase the productivity of their forest and therefore the value of their forest. The second critical thing is understanding the limit of powers, the jurisdiction, knowledge of the area. And as we discussed, some of the conflicts relate to even boundary communities. And therefore it's critical in steps 1 and 2 that it's not just the community applying for the rights to resources. And it's a requirement of the process and the forms that the neighboring communities are also aware, and that the neighboring traditional leaders also endorse the plans and the maps. If we have this, then there'll be less likely for contraventions of rules and for conflicts. Then the critical thing is law enforcement, is making sure that the offence is properly understood, that we review the evidence, we find the facts, we review each case and the actions, and we know who to involve and who to inform. And then lastly, that we document all our offences. And importantly, we conduct a risk assessment before taking any action and use minimum force. So basically, in community forestry, in control and law enforcement, it's just so important that there is full and wide understanding of rules and penalties and the reasons for these, that we get consensus and collective action. And that our community groups, the community executives, are accountable and transparent in their control of the forest. And what we're saying to them, and we've said that today as we close the training today, is what you do as a CFMG, as a community, with your traditional leaders, will make all the difference to your forest and your community. So I'd just like to end on that note. Thank you.
Many thanks, Alistair, for that insightful presentation. Law enforcement, of course, just to re-emphasize that it's quite a thorny issue. Even at national level, we are still struggling with this particular part of an activity. We have so many legal activities. The extent to which CFMGs can manage this is another question. Okay, like I said earlier, that Alistair isn't feeling too well, so we need to give him time to rest. So we shall allow questions at this point in time. I see 4 questions already in the Q&A panel. So the first one is more of Mwape Mumbi is sharing a petition there, which all of you should sign at some point. But the real question is, first, the background to it is that there's some proposal by Tanzanian business, Lake Industries or Agro, who would like to venture into agriculture activities, I suppose, in a forest area. So it's feared that the raising of natural forests in Kafinda GMA will adversely affect Kasanga and Bangwero wetlands. What are the lessons of this with respect to governance and community benefits of forest practices, stroke police enforcement? It's a question a little bit at a higher level, at a national level, but Alistair, do you want to attempt?
On the Tanzanian one?
Yeah, it's in Kafinda. This is in the central province. The proponent is a Tanzanian business person. It must be a company. They're proposing to set up an agro industry. I think it must be in a communal forest. It's a natural forest. And the proposal is really to slash off some of the forest, I think significant portions of the forest. But then the question, what are the lessons of this with respect to governance and community benefits of forestry practices or policy enforcement? So it's a little bit at a higher level, But if you have no comments on it, it's fine. But if you can, that's okay.
Yeah, I think in terms of what we're discussing in community level law enforcement, it comes at the end of the whole process of community forestry. So where there's been a transfer of rights. So I would say, and I think it's a requirement of any development in any area, that the local stakeholders are consulted before any development is approved. And so I hope that the people, the authorities that are engaging the stakeholders who live in that area about this development are also being made aware of the government policy and strategy for community forestry, so they're able to weigh up the options and opportunities that are available, and that in fact going down the community forestry route first that empowers the communities might help them then reflect on and negotiate whether they would want to have this sort of development in this area. I recall from the Decentralized Forest and Other Natural Resources Management Program, when we're working in Northwestern Province, where mining development is quite aware, and we've had this discussion, and the communities were aware that mining was a potential, maybe I use the word threat. However, they also they wanted to get to go down the route of community forestry first, because they knew that if this wider development came in, at least they would be at the negotiation table if they had first been given rights by the government. So maybe that's important. So I would just plea that whoever is responsible for this from the local authority level, and that includes the forestry department or the district forest office, fully engages all the stakeholders in the area, that they are aware of their options and opportunities that might be available through community forestry in Zambia. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Alistair. Just to add a little bit, just to reemphasize that the lessons which can be learned from there is that we have to scale up community forests, and that is the purpose of these webinars and a couple of other engagement processes that will come through in the future. So when communities have secure rights, then their mouths are also not shut. They can actually participate effectively through these kind of processes. Okay, so there's another question from Patricia. She's looking at the issue of coordination and harmonization in terms of law enforcement in these different categories of natural resource management areas, GMWs, forest areas, and the traditional leaders. So the question she has is, how can we best harmonize the interests, or maybe just raising the interests of these different actors, and where do we start from? The follow-up to that is some of the traditional leaders have expressed frustrations at this lack of coordination and desire to see some coordination and programs, but they have failed because they don't have control, especially of the external actors that take programs to their area, or risk being seen as blocking development efforts. I don't know how the ground looks like in Eastern Province in terms of this.
Yeah, I think to respond to this, I would just go back to that slide I had on jurisdiction and understanding the role of different actors in the law enforcement process, and understanding what are the powers and the authority of different levels. And as I said, in terms of law enforcement, it's which law or rule the offender respects. So, excuse me. So in the first instance, if they respect the rule that's being applied, then everything is fine. But if they don't, you have to take it to the next level. So as I say, the opportunity now for both the chiefs and the community forest management groups, and one of the reasons why we brought in the honorary forest officers into the community forestry process, was that brings in the element of statutory laws. So if the issue cannot be dealt with locally, if it cannot be dealt with by the community forest management group, if it cannot be dealt with, unfortunately, by the palace, then there is opportunities for using statutory laws. And that's why I go back to Form 4 being such an important document, because this is a transfer of rights. It's embedded in the Forestry Act as well. So it's important that all this level of documentation is available to those who are responsible for law enforcement within in any locality, within the districts, and even the courts are aware of the Act, the regulations, so that the documentation can be brought. We're just discussing with the communities about when cases get severe and they have to go to court. It's the quality of the evidence that's put to the court is very important, and these agreements can form part of that evidence that is presented to the courts of the transfer of rights and authority. And so therefore it's important that these are also respected. And I think that will be one of the actions that is needed, that everyone works together to be aware of the role and the authority. The forestry department with the district authorities, with the police, with the other law enforcement officials as well. And I suppose that leads into the third question, if you want me to touch on that as well.
Oh yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, this issue of on the GMAs. Yeah, I think it is an area of potential conflict, and knowing whose rules apply, who's empowered to do law enforcement in a different area, and we tackled this issue from a number of angles. One is, if you go back to the statutory instrument, the Community Forest Management Regulations 2018, when communities are applying to be recognized, to be given the powers, yes, they need the consent of the chief. But when that application is being reviewed by the provincial authorities, we need to know the land designation, so that if the community forestry is within a GMA, that the Department of National Parks and Wildlife are fully informed and aware and participate in that. And I know when an application goes to the Forestry Department headquarters and is being reviewed, and I'm aware that some of them then go out to consultation with different government institutions, so that the forest management agreements might go out to ZEMA, they might go out to agriculture, they might go out to DNPW if it's in a wildlife area, and that's important, so that the other institutions are also aware of these applications. Then on the ground, I think at the local level, there should be an understanding that, and I've said this, that forest loss and deforestation and forest destruction is another form of poaching, because if there's no habitat for animals, there'll be no animals. So forest loss and destruction is indirect poaching. And if we all understand that, then we'll all work together to ensure that habitat is protected, forest is protected. So that's where I would be advising that there should be good understanding and coordination between the different institutions for natural resources management in any one area, and that under the local government, if we had WDCs, again, that would have been one of their responsibilities to coordinate the different community institutions responsible for natural resources management in any one area. Thanks.
Exactly. Okay, so I think you have also answered the question asked by Haggai. He's asking, are the permits or licenses issued under CFM recognized by other law enforcement wings, e.g. the police particularly?
Yeah, yeah. I think this is all new, and it's important as part of our training that permits and licenses or permits are properly completed, and then it's the role really for the district forest officer to make sure that the powers that have been given by the Director of Forestry are also respected by other government institutions. So the awareness and understanding should be broader than just the key line ministries or departments. So I say that that's now an issue for the district forest officers to take up with their colleagues. Thanks.
Okay, it's also important to understand that community forest management regulation is a law, and therefore whatever the agreement contains, because it's also recognized by law, it is actually the permits which are issued by this same recognized and in agreement with the government remains a legal document.
So
okay,
Roy, just to add on that, I think my slide was a bit quick, but the community permit, the stamp that we put on the permit, it says that this group, under whichever chiefdom, is recognized by the Director of Forestry. So that I say that just reinforces what you've just said in terms of the regulation. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Alistair. The ROF was just putting up, it's just food for thought. So on how much 1 hectare of Miombo would cost, I think that we can think through it. Okay, so I want to get to the raised hands now, and I think we'll allow about 3 of those. Okay, so I'll start with Nkoma, Goods Andrew. Please go ahead. You can unmute yourself and ask the question or make a comment.
Yeah. I hope you are hearing now.
Loud and clear.
Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to comment, like Alistair's put it, in terms of law enforcement. I understand that the Forest Act has also recognized the Community Sources Board, who have applied and have also been recognized as CFMG after they have applied. So in the area where the community forest management has been set up by the committee, and that process that Alistair has explained has been followed and everything else, the community source boards can also use the community scouts in the GM way because of the sensitivity. So the CRBs, who are also working as the CFMGs, have been seen being very active both in the GMA and open area, trying to supplement on the issue of forest guards, like the community scouts that have been recruited, and those have been performing the duties in forest and other illegal activities, mostly in the game management areas and open areas where the CRB is also recognized as the CFMG. So that has been working well, and we've seen the wardens and the rangers and everyone else working with our partners, doing the deployments and providing rations and everything else. So that has been working well, because all of you understand how sensitive the GMOs are. They are like poachers, any other, so you cannot send a honorary forestry guard with a panga or with an axe when he's meeting people with fire with no armed weapons. So we recommend that when the committee have applied for such and working in the open and game management here where there is an existing of the CRB which has been recognized as a CFMG, we work together with forest department and ensure that they carry both illegal for the forestation and other things, including wildlife. That has been working very well. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Andrew, for that clarification. Okay, so I'll go to Makungu. Angel?
Thank you, Professor. I just wanted to add a comment on what Anton has just said. It's on the issue of coordination. For some reasons, I as Angel, I want to bring this up and not as Komako. I've observed because of different prayers and because of what is coming out of this community forest, it has risen that most of the organization are going into community forest for the benefit of the organization and forgetting the real objective of what it means to devolve the rights from forestry department to give the authority for the communities to manage, which should at the end of it will result into sustainable management of these forests. Why am I bringing this point on what is being talked about in terms of coordination is I feel as players on the ground, we tend to confuse the communities, and what we are taking into the community is what benefit the organization will give to that community as opposed to what benefit the community will get when they manage this community sustainably.
Okay.
Bring that to a point, I feel there is more that needs to be done, not on the community's level, but on the players, such that these players operating in this chiefdom should find a way of coexisting, not to confuse the community and not to end in a way like it becomes politics. Because I feel the objective of the division of the act, the SI and everything will not attain the desired results if players will not coordinate in a way that will address the desired objective of the revision in terms of the SI, which is sustainable utilization of these resources. Secondly, I feel not only do it administratively, where in a GMA, if there's a CRB, because the Act specifically say that the CRB may apply. So if a CRB does not apply, meaning any village living closer to that community may apply to be recognized as CFMG. I think if we had to resolve that, there should be a way where it should be very clear in the Act to say the CRB should be the one to apply and be recognized as a CFMG automatically. Because I feel that is what is giving all the players on the ground to say, okay, it says may. So even any group formed can apply as CFMG. To me, that's why I take it, which is bring those many confusions in the GMA if those groups decide not to work together or to coordinate so that they can attain the desired results for this. I think those are some of the contributions I just wanted to put there. Thank you.
Okay, many thanks, Angel, for that contribution and some clarification. Okay, so we get the last hand, which is Ephraim, and thereafter we'll go to the next presentation. Ephraim, please, under 2 minutes. You can unmute yourself. Thank you.
I think I asked that question because just yesterday I was in Chairman. We were resolving how best CFMTs, CRBs, and all other community-based organizations can actually coordinate their activities with respect to law enforcement. And seems fit to say that at least after having a day long of debate, looking at the two acts and the like, I think the communities were happy to leave the coordination.
Hi, Ephraim.
Law enforcement.
Okay, please, yeah. You have muted yourself again. Okay. Okay, so thanks a lot for clarifying your question and also providing an answer to it. Yeah, so everything discussed, I think, will venture around the quality of awareness raising, which I have time and again said it's very important when you are starting this process. They are new and everybody sits on the offense. So if the quality of awareness raising is wrong, not only to the communities, but to the other partners, it becomes difficult to move forward in whatever you are going to do later on. Okay, Alistair, I would like to thank you so much for making yourself available despite not feeling too well. And we wish you all the best and a quick recovery. And we are hoping to see you again next week since you are still making a presentation with us on the last day. Okay, thanks so much, thanks and please rest well. Okay, so we are now moving to issues around benefit sharing. Benefit sharing is always a very contested issue. And if it's not well managed, it can either promote or basically result in a complete breakdown of governance and as far as communities are concerned. In other words, if they don't see the benefit, then they don't participate. All of us report for work because we know at the end of the day, there's a benefit, there's a salary at the end of the month that will come through. So we want to address this question of looking at, does a good benefit sharing mechanism lead to positive outcomes in community forest management? And to lead us in this will be Mr. Max Opiri, whom I already introduced as the Provincial Forest Officer for Northwestern Province. His master's degree dissertation was basically looking at this issue in Dambwa in Livingstone. That was the first case of joint forestry management way back in the early 2000s. So, Mr. Piri, please, the floor is yours. Thank you. Hi, Max.
Thank you, Professor Vinya. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. You can hear you. You can proceed.
Good afternoon, Professor Vinya.
Good afternoon. I can hear you. Hi, Chirombo. I think we have a
You can
problem
hear
with
me?
Max. Is in the attendees rather than in the panel.
Yeah, I can't
Sorry.
seem to promote him to panelist, so he can go ahead and present from there. It's fine. I'll control his PowerPoint presentation.
Okay, so we can hear you. Please, go, you can continue.
Okay, thank you. Although my internet connection is a bit unstable, but I'll go ahead.
Please proceed.
Hello?
So we can hear you. You are loud and clear.
I was saying my internet connection is a bit unstable, but I'll go ahead.
Yeah, that's fine. Just switch off your video and then audio would be fine. But are you able to share your presentation anyway?
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you. Although I was saying my connection was a bit unstable. Yeah, basically, yeah, it's off. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, as earlier indicated, it's let me see.
Hi, Max. I'll control your presentation. You can go ahead.
We seem to have lost the Max here. Hi, Max. Okay, I hope.
Okay, while we try to get Max back, I think we can move to Martin.
Okay, I think so. Hi, Martin, are you available? Okay, so we will move to Martin. Hi, Martin.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Okay, so we can hear you loud and clear. So as we wait for Max to find himself an auntie where he can get clear signal, we'll move to Martin. Martin is the DFO for Chinsali province. For Chinsali district. He was one of the first people we trained in community forestry management. And he has since continued scaling up community forest management in the Chinsali district. So we are going to hear from the DFO's perspective, what is on the ground, how it is going, what challenges they are facing, how they are going about with law enforcement and benefit sharing. Please, Martin, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. As introduced, this is Mchongo Martin, District Forest Officer for Chinsali District.
Kindly share your screen.
Is it visible there?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
But just put it in PowerPoint in slide projection. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Please, you can
Thank
proceed.
you so much. Like I said, I'm Mchongo Martin, Forest Department, Chinsali, Chinga Province. To start with, I would like to say thank you so much to Professor Vinya, the ILRG team, and also to everyone that is together with us in this meeting. I have the opportunity to share on the perspectives from the DFO's point of view on benefit sharing and law enforcement with respect to Chapalakata Community Forest Management Group. The outline of the presentation, I'll first give you a brief background of Chapalakata Community Forest Management Group. Then from there, we'll be able to look at issues of women empowerment, forest control, benefit sharing, and I'll end with challenges surrounding the implementation and some of the activities under the CFMG. Chapalakata Community Forest Management Group was formed in 2016, or started to be formed in 2016. However, they were legally, the agreement was rather signed in 2018. And like the professor has said, we were privileged to be one among the 6 other districts in the whole country who were supported by the decentralized forests and other natural resources management program to pilot community forestry in Zambia. We were privileged to having been there when the guidelines were formulated, the steps, and everything in between. The forest area under Chapalakata Community Forest Management Area is 350 hectares, and it was formed in an area under the Kapele landscape. That was then our working area under the FNRMP. The first committee that was elected and which was re-elected comprised 6 males and 4 females, and started with a female chairperson who was again re-elected for a second term in 2019. The main purpose for the community forest was issues surrounding watershed protection, because Chapalakata is an area on a hill, so to speak, which forms the watershed area for most of the streams in the area. In terms of village membership, Chapalakata Community Forest Management Group comprises 8 villages that are members to the CFMG, and currently the number of user groups has risen to 5. We started with 4, but 1 has since been added. Chapalakata Community Forest Management Group are not the only ones in Chinsali. We have 2 we have already been recognized, and we're just waiting for the signing of the agreement. Soon the steps 3 and 4 have already been done, together with the signing of from FAO. So in terms of community forest in Chinsali, we are hopeful that very soon will be elevated to 3. In terms of location, it's located in Chinga province, of course, the Chinsali district. And as you can see from the maps, the dot there that has been expanded is the 350 hectares and the Chapalakata Community Forest Management area. I'd like to move on to talk about the success stories that have been recorded so far under the CFMG. One of the most successful stories to tell are those that have to do with the village banking. Village banking scheme was started in 2018 under the Ministry of Community Development, still working with the decentralized forest and other natural resources management program. Since 2018, village banking moved up to 2020, and it was actually very, very successful. A number of women, actually it started with 80 women, and out of the 80 women, in terms of percentages, it was the recoveries stood at over 85%. From the same women empowerment, the Chinsali Municipal Council, in partnership with PTA of Finland, identified the Chapalakata Community Forest Management Group, women, and they entered into a partnership with PTA, again to promote empowerment of women folk through also the promotion of local democracy. So far, some of the women there were trained and capacity built in a number of things that range from product development and value addition. Moving on, still talking about women empowerment, as you can see in the picture there, that is a vegetable field that is being grown by one of the women there. I wish I could share the video, but then this is one of, this was recorded in 2019, and one of the women who actually was a beneficiary of the loan, village banking loan, went ahead after having invested in non-timber forest products for the resources and the profits that she realized as she went on to venture into gardening, bought vegetable seeds, and what we are seeing there are seedlings that are ready to be planted. In terms of forest control, the community forest has recorded some success, yes. We can see a CFMG permit issued under the Caterpillar harvesting user group, and so far the CFMG seem to be in control, although they reported some issues in 2020 where the community forest recorded more caterpillars within the community forest than outside the community forest, and so it was very difficult to keep actually illegal entry to the community forest. And also in terms of the honorary forest officers, Chapalakata Community Forest Management Group only has 3 honorary forest officers who were actually just gazetted this year, as we were able to see from Alistair's presentation. And so this, in a way, they delayed the gazettation of the HFOs, in a way affected the supervision and the patrols and monitoring of illegal entry in a way. And also the other issue has to do with the participation of the other members of the CFMG, which has been very low to that effect. Still talking about the forest condition. Just when we had the evaluation team that visited the community forest, I think it should have been late or mid last year. Actually, wild animals can actually be seen, have been spotted in the community forest. The community actually reported seeing something like a duiker there. And so the community forest, since inception, has actually recorded significant improvement in terms of the value and the quality of forest and other biodiversity that can be found there. In 2019, I'd like to share some of the figures that we were able to record. In 2019, under the Caterpillar user group, 292 gallons, or metas as they call them here, were recorded from the bulking center. And at the time, the cost of a gallon was at 50 kwacha, and it gave the CFMG 14,600. This money was recorded, though not at CFMG level, but as individual contributions through the households that harvested these caterpillars. In 2020, the price surged to 100 kwacha per gallon, And this is where there was that pandemonium, and the CFMC could not control effectively the mass entry into the community forest. Unfortunately, no records were availed, and the caterpillars were not bulked because of that pandemonium. Talking about honey, in 2019, 41 liters were harvested, but this only came from one beekeeper who was about seven frame hives. I managed to sell 30 liters, and the other 11 liters was consumed at household level. In 2020, again, there were no records because essentially the gassing and the COVID-19 were issues of concern at the time, and everybody perhaps refocused. And also we didn't actually have, even elsewhere in the district, honey production was actually almost nil. Perhaps bees, I don't know whatever happened. Then under the mushrooms in 2019 again to 2020, the district experienced very heavy rainfall, and there was not much in terms of drying of mushrooms that the CFMG would record. I move on to talk about benefit sharing. The CFMG is yet to record any success here. It is the one matter I actually followed very well the presentation from Alistair and the contributions from the attendees there. We still have a long way to go here in Chinsadia's Chapalakata in terms of arriving at benefit sharing, which is visible, which the communities appreciate, the communities can benefit from. Apart from the fact that communities, individuals within the community are able to go to the open areas, are able to enter into the community forest, harvest caterpillars, harvest mushrooms. There has not been any successful effort to put those resources into a common basket in the name of Chapalakata Community Forest Management account, which could be shared as it has been documented in the Constitution. The community seems to still be grappling with issues of working together, communal control, communal benefit, so to speak. And so they have actually found it easier to work as individuals as yet. And so it is another, it's still one of the areas that needs a lot of help, where we want as a department and other stakeholders to see how can the community realize these benefits that can be shared. Actually, just about 3-4 days ago, I received a report that the chief, one of the chiefs, was actually there are two chiefs that board the Chapalakata Community Forest Management area. One of them was asking about his share, his percentage, because from the Constitution is very clear his percentage, and the CFMG could not give him a proper answer. The other issue that perhaps could answer to some of the issues are the challenges that I would like now to present. Chapalakata, like I said, is 350 hectares total size. This is quite small compared to the number of villages and the size of villages that form membership of this community forest. They started with 350 hectares. Like I said, we were piloting, we were privileged to be pilots. And then the community was very skeptical at the time. And because they were not too sure whether government and the DFNRMP were working in good faith. And so they decided to choose an area which was degraded and also which in its management was not a couldn't be a production forest, and also of relatively small size to try it out. It is only now that they are confessing that they wished, actually they had opened their eyes quite earlier and chosen a much bigger area and a much better area, a much better forest. The other issue is the long distances to the CF to most of the member villages. The nearest village is about 3 kilometers to the CF. The furthest villages, and these are actually the most, over 4 or 5 kilometers to the CF. This makes the CF almost irrelevant to their day-to-day forest products requirements.
Okay,
Also,
Martin, if you can, Martin, if you can just hurry up a bit, you are running short of time.
Okay, I'm just about to finish. Then also the poor participation of the CFMG members in communal control. Most of the members are actually not participating as they should. The other problem is most of the members, because of the way the benefit sharing percentages were structured, are happier to free ride. At the end of the day, there's a percentage coming to them. Then, like I said, it's small, it's far from most of the villages. They have alternative sources of forest products from open areas around their villages where they're sourcing for these products. So they're not in a hurry to actually invest and keep their energies in the CF. The primary purpose of this forest, like I said, was for watershed management, and it gives very little in terms of other benefits. The community forest, like I said, also was stepped quite first and the land that was deemed of little worth to them at the time, according to their confession. Then the last one, under the challenges, is the inadequate technical and financial support that they are grappling with together with us, to try to help them implement step 6. Thank you so much for your attention. Back to Professor.
Many thanks, Martin, for that insightful presentation. And it's interesting that you have figures. In most CFMGs, figures are not seen. I'm actually riding on what Gideon just has written. It's very important, really, that when we present these figures, which was raised last week, it tends to give us an idea where we are going and whether we are achieving or not. Okay, so before we lose the Max again, since he's available, I want to quickly get to Max. Max, are you able now to make your presentation?
Yes, I am.
Okay,
Yes,
thanks. Please, the floor is yours. You have 30 minutes to deal with your presentation.
30 minutes. Okay, thank you, Professor Venya. Okay, basically, mine is a short presentation or look what does good beneficiary mechanism lead to positive outcomes of community forest management. Much of the discussion has been done by the two presenters, but I'll add on top of what I've presented. Basically, it's a short outline where we will look at the background of community participation, then the significance of beneficiaring, and why would they influence community participation, then few experiences and of beneficiaring, then we can talk about the conclusions and of course, recommendations. Yeah, the background is that it has been recognized that communities are the best people who can look after and manage the resource adequately, as long as their rights are secure. Furthermore, we have recognized that they are key actors in managing the forest, as well as attracting investment at local level. I'm sure you're aware that based on these factors, without community participation having a significant stake in the management of a local forest resource, the efforts which government is trying to do in terms of co-managing the resource can be very ineffective if local people are not involved in the management of the forest resource. So basically, this is the background on community participation. As we can go on, when it comes to community-based forest management, it has attracted significant attentions in many countries, particularly in Asia, because of the belief that there is potential to improve the welfare of the local people, those who live within and around the forestry areas. But the extent to which this potential is realized is dependent strongly on the communities which will come from the forest resource, whether they reach the poorest at local level. So that's the main aim. They will have to ensure that the communities, they reach the poor people at the local level. Yes, please. So when it comes to benefit sharing, in terms of significance, benefit sharing is considered as one of the most important elements of community participation, as it provides positive incentives for the communities to continue participating and also achieving something. Hence, what is needed here is to see the tangible benefit accruing to communities in turn for their time and energy which they use in managing the resource, so that we can secure long-term commitment. Without these, then we cannot have meaningful, sustainable forest management. So this approach is recognized as to give the actors these incentives so that they can be involved in forest management and also to protect the same resource. Therefore, for us to have successful and meaningful sustaining community forest management, we require attractive incentives that will balance between what they are putting in and what they are taking out, to motivate these actors to invest their time and effort so that they secure these resources in the long term. Also, local people, for them to participate, they need to also change some behavior, what we call behavioral change. But the behavior change cannot result if there is meaningful incentive coming to communities so that they can change their behavior. And so doing, they will enhance protection of the resource and also utilizing the resource in a sustainable way. But if there is no benefit accruing to them, they will end up using the resource as an open access resource. And all of it may go to waste because there will be no benefit accruing to particular individuals or the groups. Therefore, distributing and the distribution and the type of benefits are critical to incentivize the communities to participate. So, as I said earlier on, it's a distribution of the incentives and the type of incentives which can accrue to communities for them to participate in the management of the forest. It also, some studies have been done where it was shown that the local people will normally reject some projects where opportunity costs are high rather than benefit. There's several studies have been done. I've just listed the few, but a number of studies have been done. Even here locally, it has been proved that if communities don't get benefit, then they don't participate meaningful in these activities. And it's also probable that communities value benefits in monetary terms more than the benefits they accrue from non-timber forest products. This was proved from the study which was done in Dambwa local forest in Livingstone, Southern Province, where the government was trying to pilot joint forest management. Then following the study, it was found that we were trying to look at the perception of the people in managing the resource in a sustainable way. But following the study, it was found that local people usually get discouraged where there is no or there is lack of equitable sharing of economic benefit according to the local people. So it's important to look at the benefit, because before people are engaged in JFM or community forestry, they have access to minor forest products. Things like mushroom, wild fruits, even honey, medicinal plants, they have access to these minor forest products. Hence, by them engaging in participatory forest management, they need the meaningful and tangible benefit which should accrue to them so that these can uplift their livelihood. So the main aim for them to participate is to improve their livelihood, because all along they've been getting their minor forest products. So what they want is also access to major forest products which can improve their livelihood. So the issue is if they, as at now, they're able to access the minor forest products, what should attract them to participate in forest management? It is a meaningful benefit which can uplift their livelihood. So there are cases where, like for instance, Comaco and the PCB, where they have shown that there is a pivotal role of benefit sharing, which can play to incentivize the communities. So in these both cases, Comaco and the PCB, they are using now the RED Plus benefits, which are driving communities to set aside large tracts of land for forest management. This contrasts with experiences from around the country where there's lack of monetary incentives, which appear to make communities feel reluctant to set aside land for community management, or as a parcel which can be set aside for community forest management. Therefore, most countries acknowledge the importance of benefit sharing, looking at various studies which have been done both locally and abroad, where we're looking at the community participation. What should drive community to participate if they have had rights to access the forest previously? But for them to get involved now, it should mean that they are getting more than what they're getting previously. So most countries, they acknowledge that the importance of getting benefit sharing right. So some countries are already implementing benefit sharing and exploring the viability of applying current systems to RED Plus incentives. I just give you examples like Cambodia, Colombia, Vietnam, and Costa Rica. And other countries now, they are investing in studies and consultative processes to determine suitable benefit sharing arrangement. I'll give you an example of Ghana and Vietnam. Here in Zambia, of course, we talk about community forest management, where they're supposed to enshrine benefit sharing in their constitution. But what should be done is, even if they enshrine the benefit sharing in the constitution, does the benefit trickle down to the local people, and what type of benefit should accrue to local people so that continuously participate in forest management? So most communities' perspective is that their involvement in forest management would result in social uplifting of their living conditions through utilizing of the previously denied forest access and benefit accruing from their management effort. In this case, I'm looking at in terms of in this country where communities, they have no right to engage in major forest produce like timber harvesting or timber trade unless they have concession or they act as a merchant. But what they want is they want to be fully engaged in timber trade, which is a major produce and can easily uplift their livelihood. So even if community forest management, they have given the user rights and access rights, they have to apply for another right to be engaging in timber trade, like timber harvesting and trade. But once they are given that, we have to make things right, where the same benefit should accrue to the community and they flow to the lowest person in the community. So in the constitution, we should have right arrangement of how benefits should be shared among the communities. Of course, some of the benefits should be set aside so that some of the monies or benefits in monetary terms should remain in the community to uplift their livelihood. The other ratio should go towards managing the same resource. And the other stakeholders should also participate, particularly like the traditional leaders. They need to benefit from the same incentives which are occurring from community participation. Therefore, I think there's no doubt that the benefits and the cost sharing, as well as the governance issues, are crucial or critical in participatory forest management and also in the community forestry management to succeed. I think this is my short presentation to add on the two previous presenters. Thank you, Professor.
Many thanks, Martin, for that very short presentation. I thought you would speed over and you have saved us quite a lot of time. Okay, and really benefit sharing is an issue that is being contested, even where it is written in black and white. The issue of defining what a benefit is becomes very crucial. Is it monetary or is it non-monetary, or should you put them together? The non-monetary, of course, if you're talking about communities, they have been accessing those already, and what new things are you bringing on board? Okay, so we still have the two panelists, and therefore we'll proceed to question and answer session. So I'll start with the questions in the questions and comments, which are popped up in the question and answer panel, and then we'll go to the raised hands. Let's see, yeah. Okay, so there's a question. Martin, how many institutions or groups have access to the benefits of Chaparakasa community forest area? And what are the percentage shares?
Chapalakata, the stakeholders under benefit sharing arrangements are 11. Yeah, it will take a bit of time for me to access the actual percentages, but they are 11. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so in terms of area which is suitable for community forest, I think this one is for all of us to some extent. But Max, in your experience, would you recommend a degraded area for community forest management?
I think from my personal experience, I wouldn't recommend the communities alone to engage in CFM in a degraded area, unless they work with government to promote, to regenerate those areas. Because what they'll be looking for is benefit. How do they put in time and energy where they don't expect immediate benefits? In fact, I've seen in most projects or programs and activities where there are no benefit. Usually the participation dwindles as soon as the benefit, or rather incentives from that program, it comes to an end. So I don't recommend CFM in a degraded area, but maybe JFM in a degraded area.
Okay, so yeah,
they can easily get benefit.
Okay, good. So in addition to that answer is that if it's a community driven, if the communities themselves decide to manage a degraded area for a particular purpose, then that's fine. There's no pressure there because the communities themselves know what they are taking themselves into. But if it is as a result of a bit of awareness raising, then it becomes a big problem because to manage the expectations in a degraded area is difficult.
Yes.
But overall, we should manage both degraded and non-degraded areas. We are duty bound to do that as the citizens. Okay, so Haga is asking, are there specific studies that have been carried out to determine the contribution of community forest management to household income in areas where CFM has been in practice? So I think, yes, can I hand this over to Makungu, or if you want, Max, you can try on that. Angel, do you help us with that? It's open. Has Komako done these? These are best. You do baseline studies, then you do compare at the end of your implementation. Very quick.
Not specific study that has been done, Professor, but I would point out to our monitoring or our compliance levels, because we do compliance levels every year, annual compliance levels, which are specific to chiefdoms. And I would roughly say chiefdoms that have been getting benefit from the carbon credits in terms of forest management in our conservation areas show good results, reduce deforestation as compared to these new ones which are still not on the project. Because we've got some areas which are not on the carbon project, and we've got those areas which are on the carbon project. So I would say there is much contribution, much benefit which is being seen, or results which is being seen from these monies they are getting from carbon project, as opposed to those who are yet to. Thank you. Hello?
Okay, sorry, I muted myself. Okay, Martin, there's an issue on the issues around the Urban and Planning Act on planning agreements and the rate at which customer land is being allocated and converted to state land. How are we working towards securing bigger pieces of land for community forests?
Professor, here for Chisali?
Just general, but because you are demonstrating like 350 hectares. Okay. But in comparison to what is falling under state land, is much bigger than that. So how are we countering that to ensure that the forests remain forests?
Sure. Like I mentioned in my preamble, we have 2 more community forests that are in the making. Those combined coming to something like 6,000 hectares. We have continued in terms of awareness raising, so that as many and many communities get to know, get to hear about the opportunities of community forestry. So far, so good. I think I would end there.
Okay, so I can add at national level, I think what is crucial is for all of us, and that's the purpose of this CFM webinar series, to ensure that we scale up benefit. We scale up community forest management in the country without looking at quantity, but also looking at quality, so that we can begin to generate models that basically incentivize other communities to join in, so that much of the area comes under community forest management area, and then we should be able to counter the rate at which we are losing customary land to state land. So this one is for Forestry Department. What role does Forestry Department play in ensuring transparency and benefit sharing? Mr. Piri, you are the acting director, I'm sure, on this platform.
Okay, as a department, because the first department is part to community forest management, and under the current statutory instrument, the Constitution should specify the benefit sharing arrangement. So they should enshrine the benefit sharing arrangement in the Constitution. And as I said, first department is part to the participation of communities in the CFM. And it becomes part of the law, because the Constitution is also the management plan is enshrined in the agreement. So hence there is transparency in terms of what accrue to which communities.
Okay, excellent. Okay, thanks a lot. Okay, this is another question. I think this also applies to you. Who determines what an ideal benefit is? Are public goods ideal benefits under community forest management? In other words, should we push ahead with community forest management in customary areas which are really considered to be public goods? Max?
I think what should determine what are the ideal benefits. As I said earlier on, if we just rely on products as benefit according to communities, they say these benefits have been having these benefits before this arrangement, so that can the other benefits from the major forest produce. Equally, other public goods and services should also be considered as benefits. So to me, I think both should be ideal.
Okay, so the idea of CFM really is to ensure that we do away with the open access, isn't it? We are seem to be losing. Yeah, okay.
We have to do all of that.
Okay. Then the last one on this panel.
As communities, as community members, they access.
Okay. So this is the last question. Again, it's on you, Mr. Piri. Before I go to the panel, I've seen 3 hands already. So in terms of your experience of benefit sharing of CFM as in Northwestern Province, what experience can we learn? We're just learning from Muchinga right now, but what experience do we have? Are there any accrued, are there any benefits that have accrued to some CFMGs, and are there any which are being shared, the communities at large? This is coming from Elizabeth.
Okay. At the moment in Northwestern, we have, for instance, in Northwestern, of course, at the moment we have 12 community forest management areas, and only 2 have applied for right to use the major forest produce, but they're yet to receive major benefits in terms of monetary terms. What is happening that it's only the user groups in the community forest management groups who are benefiting from their activities, which are they engaged in, the forest-based income generating activities, and accruing to communities. Okay, but so you cannot say that is driving them from the poverty per se, no. And sorry.
Okay. So it's not significant, but it's happening, in other words.
It's happening, but not significant, yes.
Okay.
Maybe the 2 who applied for the right to harvest cheaper were yet to see when they start that activity.
Those are the 2 in Kasempa, is it? Okay, so I'm going to the raised hands. I think, Sarah, your hand has been up for quite a while. Please go ahead, you unmute yourself and proceed with your comment, question, or clarification. Then we'll come to Angel, then Andrew. In that order, please. Sarah.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Can you hear me?
Loud and clear, yes, please.
Okay. Good afternoon, Prof. Oh, okay.
Thank you. Please proceed. I seem to have lost you temporarily. Otherwise, you were loud and clear.
Thank you so much. Yes. I wanted to find out from my colleagues who started earlier on doing these CFMs on how much they have done on value addition. Why I've asked this question is when I look at our CFMs, most of them are not doing very well because the communities are not maximizing the forests to the fullest. And they keep on selling the same products they used to sell for their households in the same form. And because of that, they are not realizing a lot of profit or a lot of revenue from them. So how much are we doing in order to improve this value addition so that our products in our CFMs are competing on the international and local markets? And then the other one I wanted to talk about is the law enforcement. Here in Mpika, we have formed what we are calling the district task force. We have picked on all the structures that are in the communities, like the WDC, the CRBs, and the CFMs, the scouts, and the honoraries, and we have formed this district task force so that our communities are working together and they are coordinating these CFM activities in terms of law enforcement. The only challenge that we had here in the GMS is on the benefit sharing. The CRB thought maybe if they control the benefit from the CFMs, then everything will be fine. That was the only challenge, but we had to sit down as a district and we resolved that one. And then again, on the benefit sharing, I wanted to mention to say, even as our CFMs are putting down those percentages they put in their constitutions, they should understand to say much of that money is not all the time that they are going to be benefiting from whatever is going on in their CFMs. They should know that most of the time they will need this revenue to go to their enterprise and forest protection. So it's very, very important to mention to them to say it's not all the time. And because of that, I think maybe they should come up with maybe getting benefits, maybe quarterly or maybe after a year, so that they understand this, that it's very important for them to set aside yes, they should set aside some benefits for enterprise and forest protection, because this is what is giving them that money. So if they share everything, then the forest will die. I've talked about this because I've seen this happening in 2 of our CFMs that we have. There is literally nothing happening there, and most of the time they are calling me on how to help them. Yes, so we need to lead them in that direction. Thank you so much.
Many thanks, sir. Which institution?
Forest Department.
Oh, FD.
Forest Department. Yes.
Okay, so you are the DFO?
Yes, sir.
Okay, many thanks. Okay, so I'll ask, I think, Martin to hand that, and this resonates with what Rolf just commented on in terms of how far are we getting into helping these communities begin to process and gain value on the products rather than selling raw materials to the outside world, which fetches less money. I'm sure the medal you're talking about of caterpillars for 50 kwacha here in Kitwe, it's like almost 600 kwacha or so. So the difference is huge. So Martin, do you want to get on that?
I think just I can make very quickly contribution. Yes. With the Chapalaka experience here, the lessons that we took them through in terms of enterprise development and entrepreneurship seem to be paying off, because since 2019, the community has reported that they are able to make significant monetary benefits, to gain significant monetary benefits from their non-timber forestry products. But then coming to talk about value addition, we still have, I think, a long way to go with the communities to ensure that they come to a place where they can process and add value to their products. We are there, we are on course, but like I mentioned in our challenges, we have some technical and perhaps financial challenges that should take us there. But we are on the course, and it's very, very important because, like we are saying, benefits cannot be shared when the money has not been generated. The communities will not benefit anything until they first of all gather the benefit. They reap the benefits, they create the benefits. And this is what we are working on to ensure that communities don't just hear a song, but they actually begin to see the actual results coming out of community forest management. Thank you.
Okay, many thanks. The other one I'll take is that was a comment in terms of how they are dealing with law enforcement at the district level where it is working out, and that is the purpose of this webinar, to share experiences so that others can learn how to do it better. And thanks for sharing those experiences, Sarah. I saw a couple of hands, but they seem to have gone down. So, okay. Andrew, can we take Andrew, then Mason, Levi? Andrew first, then Mason, then we can answer 2 other questions which have come through here.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. I'm sure I'm edible enough.
Very much.
Sure. I wish to appreciate that the idea of coming up with the community forest under protection has really resulted
so just
in...
make you, sorry, Andrew, to cut you short, just make your questions very short, eh?
Okay, sure. Yeah, my question is, especially when it comes to benefit sharing on the monetary part, Nkani and Arab, I want to find out because I feel the partner organization among the community, the partner organization does understand more in terms of how much has been generated. For example, it is also important that the community understand the volume of the carbon and at what amount they are sold, and at the end of the day, how it should be shared. Because this has to be clear so that these communities, because they're the ones that have that right, of course, they have shared that right with the partner. But I feel there is more to be done for the partner organization to explain in details how this business is done, especially when it comes to carbon trading. I also wish to request that, is it possible to have the law, like in wildlife? I think it's very clear where we understand that when they sell, like for hunting quotas, there's 5% which goes to the chief, 45% to the community, and 5% to the government. Won't it be nice to adopt a situation where we have clear sharing mechanism even for the carbon fees, so that it's regulated by government? That's my submission.
Okay, many thanks, Andrew. I will get to that. Angel, very quickly, we only have 4 minutes to go.
Thank you, Professor. Anyway, I wanted to echo Liz's Zelita's question, and I think Godfrey has mentioned it as well. We basically taking this community forest without looking at the risk that comes with it. More to say what she was trying to say in terms of urban and region planning. Because when you look at the Forest Act, it specifically says an area which is not settled. So we are trying to look at as good as dealing with an island, but forgetting the pressure that is surrounding that area that we have converted as a community forest. So I want, as we try to venture into this, as we try to do sensitization, how well are we trying to look at agricultural land next to that area that we have demarcated as community forest? How well are we continuously engaging the chiefs so that that community forest stand a test of time? Because if we do not manage to the pressure around and just try to think about community forest, we'll lose that community forest in the future. To me, that was a very good point that she has raised, and it's worth considering as we forge ahead.
Okay, many thanks. And that answers Godfrey's question in the panel there on the risks that come along with community forestry management. Okay, Andrew, you are the last one on this. If you can unmute yourself.
Yeah, like I asked the question to say, is
very
it
brief,
possible? Yeah, I think I already asked the question or I registered my consent. So I'm waiting for feedback.
Okay, so the panel will get to that just now.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Piri, do you want to get to that on what Andrew asked? Max? Max, I see you raise your hand. I'm saying, can you just unmute yourself and get on this? Okay. Okay.
Professor
Oh,
Vinya.
okay. Yes, please. There's a question
Hello,
which was
Professor.
raised from DPN. I can get you.
Yeah, there was a question on the value addition. I just had some experience from here.
Okay, very briefly. We just have like under a minute to disappear from this platform.
Yeah, very brief. Yes. In terms of value addition, there are some user groups under beekeeping. They used to sell their honey, raw honey, to these traders. That is a question where people just continuously start selling produce as they used to do in the past. But in this case, there's an advocacy to say it's better they add value to the honey they are producing. The starting point is to increase production. They have to look at the quantity of honey produced as well as the quality of honey produced. Thereafter, they need the packaging and market linkages. That would enhance their livelihood rather than continuously selling the raw honey to traders. So that aspect can add value to community livelihood in terms of activities coming from their community areas.
Okay, just quickly as we are closing, just to come back to Andrew, which hasn't been answered. I think the issue of transparency is very crucial really, in whatever format it is. And also, I think one of the things which we tend to do when we are starting community forestry management groups, it's to let them decide how they want to share their benefits. And the way, the spirit in which the forest regulations we drafted them was that the communities should retain everything. They can decide either to give to the chief or to government. But in this particular case, forest department has been very clear that they don't want any anything to do with benefits from the communities. So they were trying really to resolve the problems which with the current CRB regulations. That's how that regulation came into place. So in their constitution, communities basically demonstrate how they are going to share the benefits. Now, there's the issue of can the community forest management be undertaken in the national forest in line with the carbon trading, which is coming from Ephraim. I think, yes, it can. And I think one of the, if you read this, I can't remember which section it is in the Act, but the national forests, local forests, GMWs are part of areas where community forest can be practiced. But for national forests, because of national importance, the requirement is that it must be downgraded to a local forest so that it can be managed by the local communities. Unless I'm wrong, Max can correct that. Liz is asking whether
you're right.
I'm right. Okay, thank you. So Liz is asking whether does it mean that Control 99 funds are going back to the community? The answer is yes. The communities will be a mini forestry department at their own level. So, like I said, all funds that the communities raise in terms of permits and so forth will remain in the community. The only money that the forest department would collect if they are major forest produce would be money that involves the what they call conveyancing, to move major forest product from where it has been produced to an area where it has to be sold. That still remains the responsibility of the community forest. But in terms of production, the money remains, the community will decide at what value they can sell their mukwa. They don't have to say government sells at this. The community themselves can decide. They have the right, the legal right to place that particular value. I think the question that Godfrey is asking has been answered by Angel, in terms of what are the risks that we are seeing as we move in with community forests, and what mitigatory measures can we put in place. Yeah, so we are hoping that following the urban and regional planning act, the new one, it allows for holistic planning, and the community forest shouldn't be an island. I've always said that I like the model that Komako uses, that manage the entire chiefdom, don't just manage a small portion within that particular chiefdom. What happens in terms of leakage to other areas which are not being managed? Okay, so with that, we have kind of overrunning. I want to thank all the panelists for really educative presentations, and the participants for turning up. This is the third time the attendance has been so high, which means what we are discussing is of national importance. So this is not the last one. We'll be closing these webinars next week on Friday again. The next week webinar, again, very exciting. And the next week's webinar, what we are looking at is issues around how do we move forward. So we'll be looking at what are the enabling conditions that are needed for scaling up community forestry management for us to achieve the desired biodiversity conservation results. And we'll also be looking at practical ways of strengthening these community forest management groups by looking at success stories from other countries, particularly Ethiopia, Gambia. I think Gambia is the leader in this area in Africa, and we'll pick a few other examples from elsewhere. So these will be again presented by Alistair and Tekla. She'll come back to close that, and we'll get the DFO's perspectives from Chipata district. And we are hoping, I'm hoping to entice Rolf to talk about something on what he's doing, wonderful works that he's doing in Choma, Southern Province there, but to have a side discussion on that. So again, thank you very much, and really enjoy your weekend. And I hand over to Chirombo to give us if there are any issues that we need to be aware about. Chirombo.
Thanks, Roy. No issues really, just to thank everyone for your participation, and we look forward to engaging again next week at the same time on Friday. Thank you so much and have a good afternoon.